Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up.
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
Where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands
upcoming tours.
and show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Week of February 26th, 2024. Jonathan Byerly.
Welcome back. This is All That Jam, where music has no limits. We have the top 3 stories of the week coming up, plus our flashback interview with Jonathan Byerly about emergency group, plates of cake, and lots more. I did not do much this week, but watch Phish in Mexico, and we will get into that in just a minute. But first, Amanda, you got to see Marcus Rezak on his Guitar Head tour last night, right?
I did. So, Kevin, this was actually the fourth weekend in a row that I got to help out artists that have been on the show. And I thought that was really cool. It was a great show at Cervantes on the other side. Two really excellent opening bands, Hash Cabbage out of New Orleans, and then Ground Loop, who's Denver based. They've only been around for about a year, kind of electronic rock, really, really good. Fantastic night of music for sure.
Very nice, very nice. Now, did you get to catch any of the Phish in Mexico?
Not much, I'll be honest. I was out and about, so I'm going to have to rewatch, but I have been, Kevin, looking at the Wook Plus after shows, and those are always very helpful
Yes, they're always fun.
and entertaining.
I tell you what, after New Year's, I was like, what are they going to do? You know, they basically, I'm not asking for anything. I had the same feeling after Big Cypress. You know,
Mhm.
it's like, what now? You know, you've done Big Cypress, you did the big set. Um, but they really, after the first night was a one set show and it was a first set the whole way through. The second night, about halfway through the first set, they started to hit. And then by the second set, they did Wave of Hope that was 35 minutes. You're like,
Mhm.
wow, this is going to be the jam of the weekend. They turn around the next night and do a 39-minute Chalk Dust Torture that I am putting up there as maybe the best thing that they've ever done. It is a career defining moment, I feel like, for him. And you know, Mexico was getting looked over for the Sphere. I'm just it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I love that after all this time, we still get so much to talk about, get excited about. I mean, that jam before Chalk Dust, because I did listen to a little bit of it. Um, I just feel like they opened that was the second set, right?
Yeah.
Make sure I'm thinking about it right. Yeah, I mean, when they come out, you can kind of just feel sometimes like, where is this going to go? And I hate to say the word proud, but you know what? I am. After all these years of loving that band through various phases, I just feel like they're in such a good place right now.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up. I bet you they released the announcement for summer tours Tuesday because people are going to be chomping at the bit to buy
Oh, you
tickets.
know it. Oh, I have several friends who recently bought Sunday Sphere tickets for not a cheap amount. There is excitement, there is talk. I think that people want this. We need this kind of thing in our lives. It's important, and I'm so grateful that Fish can give that to us.
Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. So, all right, we got the JB interview coming up there, Jonathan Byerly. But first, why don't we get into
The top 3 stories of the week.
All right. I've got some stories for you this week, Kevin. And it's one of these things every week where I really look around for stories that, yes, connect to the jam band community, something a little bit different. And, sometimes there's some things that pop up that are really kind of unknown to me. You had shared a story. This was, I think, from Paste Magazine just last week. And it was about a band called the Bobby Lees. I had never heard of them before. They're a punk band, and I know that that is a scene that you know really, really well. This band has been around for quite some time. Sent an announcement through Instagram that, they had come to the conclusion that they had no choice but to take an indefinite hiatus. Um, it just wasn't working out. And they had sold out shows. They have a fan base, across the country. So the news was kind of a shock to some of their peers also. They've been working, they've been doing their thing, grinding, for at least 5 or 6 years with records and tours. So here they are. Um,
Mhm.
Kevin, what did you make of that story? Because there's a lot of different ways we could go with this.
Right. Well, I saw Mike Dillon posted on Facebook about he had one show canceled on the tour, and he went from making money to breaking even
Hmm.
for one show out of whatever 14, 15, 20, however many he did. And I'm looking at this band and I'm like, they don't have a fan base like he does. There people are going to, one show. He and they have to do the markets further apart where
Yeah.
Mike can play, some closer together markets there. And it doesn't surprise me, but it makes me sad and it makes me wonder, why don't they only play in their home state? I mean, maybe they all don't live together, but I just feel like completely ending it. Maybe they're trying to make a statement. Maybe they are doing a punk thing and being like, screw this,
Hmm.
kind of thing. But I feel like there's got to be a happy middle ground. Yes, probably driving Montana to Utah to Vegas is not feasible, really. I
Hmm.
think for any band, even though we know a lot of bands that do those crazy Western 9, 10 hour between cities. As you
Right.
get on the East Coast, you can do Boston, New York, Philly, DC in a week,
Yeah.
and hopefully clear enough money, but maybe it comes down to, do you have friends? Do you have couches you can crash on? And that sucks in and of itself, that you can't have your own space after you
Hmm.
work. It's like working all day and then having to go sleep on someone's couch because you don't have a house.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I ran into one of the partners of Yonder Bar. It's basically a reimagined Sancho's Last Arrow, and anyone that lives in Denver will know there's quite a storied history to that venue. Um, so this venue that's about to reopen, they're taking an interesting take, and they're going to have Monday night shows, bands that are up and coming, because as we know, Monday nights tend to be the night that most other venues don't have music.
Or it's
And
open mic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this would be like real shows. They want to provide that forum for the bands. And then he told me that they also, along with the renovation, have created a 2-bedroom apartment that bands who are playing there can stay for free for like up to 3 nights. So
Oh,
if the bands want to book any other shows or do anything, they guaranteed if they're playing that Monday, I think they can stay like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night or something if they need it.
nice.
Isn't that
Nice.
cool? Yeah.
That is.
Very, very thoughtful.
And some of these places have a third floor. They're, buildings that have that kind of thing, especially when they're more urban
Mhm.
cityscapes as opposed to,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, this whole Bobby Lee's situation, there's so much more to it, of course, than maybe I would realize. There's a lot of internal crises. Um, and I guess the story behind the story is that this announcement had actually been coming for a very long time. They don't have a big label. They paid for all 3 albums themselves, doing all their own touring, stuff, which we hear all the time. So they've done everything they can to succeed. And what this article mentioned that I've been thinking about an awful lot is that there's a make or break point for mid level artists, those that are on the cusp of a breakthrough or a breakdown.
hmm
And I hadn't really thought of it before, because they're doing enough where there's money being laid out ahead of time and plans being made, but they're not actually making any money. And the part of the announcement of the band basically was saying, this is a facade, what you all think. And I don't know, it's a sad take on how hard all these bands work, and we see that all the time, of
it's
course.
sobering.
It is, absolutely. And, it makes you wonder what you can do. And I think as individuals, when I've asked people this, what can we do to support you? It comes down to basic stuff. But if everyone who liked a band bought a shirt. It sounds silly. Buy a ticket, and if you can't go, you can't go, give it to somebody.
Mhm.
Whatever. There's things that we could do, but even that, I don't know if it's going to
Right.
really help that much.
Definitely buy the shirt, buy a pin. Space Bacon, when I saw him, had pins because there's the
Mhm.
pin collectors, so they got into that. The sweatshirt. What's it going to be? $40 you're going to spend.
Mhm.
Don't give the bar $40 in alcohol for 2 beers and a tip. Buy the shirt instead. Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate you sending that article over. It also shows this crosses genres, which is maybe not surprising, but also, like you said, sobering to realize that that's so pervasive just everywhere. Um, well, I guess I started with with the more intense story. Let's move on to something a little bit lighter. Peach Fest has become such a beloved festival. Typically, that would take place over 4 days at Montage Mountain out in Pennsylvania. Um, Huge lineup, festival favorites, basically. Um, well, that has changed and set to take place at the new summer concert stage is going to be Peach at the Beach. This is in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And they've got a pretty good lineup, but it's just one day now, which I think is an interesting departure, probably also a sign of the times. But they've announced part of their lineup at least. We've got J Rad is going to be there, Dogs in a Pile, Karina Reichman, and others. But you know what? Maybe they feel like this scaled down version is the way to go.
Right, and you have the hotels.
Mhm.
Obviously, Fish proved that it's a viable thing to do. Over 2 summers running, they did it.
Mhm.
Yeah, good for them. I wonder if the one day is also an insurance thing. They had the fire last year. If you have a 1 day festival, it's probably a lot cheaper to insure than having all those people there overnights for multiple nights.
Absolutely. And of course, the main kind of part of that festival is one day, but there's going to be some stuff going on the night before, a pre-party set. There's
Mhm.
late night set the day of, that Saturday. So for people who might want a little bit more and can afford it, there should be some options for them.
Come in Friday, leave Sunday. It's a nice
Right.
weekend at the beach.
Absolutely. And so, I think the announcement said, basically Peach Festival is taking a pause, but we want to still get the community together, and so let's make it
Keep our
about
name out there.
yeah,
Live
which
Nation spent all that money on the name.
I know. And the thing is, it really had become very well known. I mean, for a lot of people, even I immediately think of, I want to say it was 2019, Goose did a set.
Mhm.
I think that's when Rick had hurt his knee. See, I remember this. I remember seeing that set. And I feel like for me and a lot of other people, we kind of harken back to that moment as the time that we really started to pay attention. And that's why festivals are so awesome. And I'm glad that they
Right.
can still put something on.
Right. For years, it seemed to be more Almond Brothers related. You always had Government Mule and the peach. Eat a peach,
Mhm.
obviously, because I've heard many people say it's in Pennsylvania. Why is it Peach Fest? And I'm like, because originally it was Almond Brothers tinged and Eat a Peach, and
Exactly, and that is going to be honored actually. Thank you for mentioning that. So during part of that one day experience, the Allman Brothers Band will be honored. Trouble No More, who's amazing. They are going to perform "Eat a Peach" in its entirety,
there you go.
and I think, well, actually, I don't think I know that they can do that better than just about anyone else right now. They
Uh,
are fantastic.
that'll be fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our second story of the week. And then, there was another one that I was kind of going back and forth on. So this isn't maybe music specific, Kevin, but again, it's more industry, business news type things. We all know who Tyler Perry is. He's become kind of a go to for acting, filmmaking. He's a studio owner. He recently put on hold an $800 million studio expansion after seeing OpenAI's Sora. And the quote in the headline is, "Jobs are going to be lost." And it just caught my attention because this is for sure, at least for me, one of the higher kind of ranking people in the entertainment industry, not only coming out to say those words, but also financially saying, this is not happening for me right now. And granted, Kevin, he has 300 acres. He was going to add 12 sound stages. Maybe you don't need all that much, but there's people watching this AI thing really closely.
So he's saying that because of AI, he isn't he wouldn't be able to utilize all those things, because all those stages, because some of the
Mhm.
stuff is just going to be created with AI now in a back room somewhere.
That's right. So here's some of his statement on this. This is a really interesting interview. So he said he had gotten word sometime in the last year that this Sora, which I don't know that much about, was coming. He had no idea until he recently saw a demo of it, what it's able to do. He said it's shocking. And the reason is, he says, I would no longer have to travel to locations. If I wanted to be in a snowy mountain, it's text. If I want to write a scene on the moon, it's text. And AI can generate this. I don't need to build a set anywhere or put it on my lot. I can sit in an office and do this with a computer. And basically said it makes me worry so much about all the people in the business that might be affected, actors, electric transportation, all
But
that.
he's saying he's going to use it.
Well, so that's a good question. He mentioned that he had just used AI in two films that are going to be announced soon, which kept him out of makeup for hours, he said. In post and on set, he was able to use AI technology to avoid even having to sit through that process, which, you kind of see behind the scenes stuff.
So they all
Um,
lost their jobs.
well, there you go. And I would never have thought about that at all because I don't think that I'm really in touch with exactly what AI can do. Um, but he said, and this was the quote that got me, he said, I feel like everyone in the industry is running 100 miles an hour to try to catch up, try and put in guardrails, safety belts. But just like every other studio in town, we're all trying to figure it out. They don't know.
I don't know. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be interesting. We have been bringing that up with musicians, getting
Mm-hmm.
their take on it, and most of them are skeptical. Some people are, hey, I'm ready to see what it can do, and I'm going to use it as another tool in my belt.
Right. Right. Um, Harry did say also, kind of toward the end of this article, that he's really hoping that there's some kind of government approach to try to help this become a sustainable technology,
Right.
um, because it is just so pervasive. And, whether or not I even know what movies Tyler Perry's been in, I don't watch a lot of movies. That is a name that is recognized and respected in the industry. And so to come out so clearly with this, to me, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting. I don't
Mhm.
know if government. I mean, it may be the only way, but my question is, if we have AI, why don't we get it to do all the dumb stuff and let us do the fun stuff?
Mhm. That would be tremendous. I don't know what kind of incentive that would give to the people up at the top of the food chain, but
Right.
you never know. If something can be monetized, great. I think this is going to be a tough road. Unions. I mean, there are some groups who I think have a slightly better chance, but when something is so open and so currently unregulated and not
Right.
controlled, it really is going to, it takes time. And
Right.
until everyone's industries are really threatened severely, I don't know. I don't know if anything would happen.
Well, apparently SAG let down the actors with the
Hmm.
contract because some guy I read didn't get to do the movie because he refused to go and be scanned. And
Hmm.
that was one of the things they were fighting for, but apparently the Screen Actors Guild sided with the studios and is allowing this scanning, which then you don't need the actor anymore. We pay you once $1,000 and that's all the money you're ever making.
Absolutely. A fraction of the cost. So if we don't think studios um, and other, producers of content aren't going to at least seriously consider it, then I don't
We
know.
we hired an AI guy to do the every day when we do the shorts. He announces them.
Really?
Yes, it's an AI voice.
Oh man. Well, how's it working? Like,
Uh,
are you happy with
I
it?
just type in. I go to the website. I type in the sentence I want. Hit convert. Boom! There it is. I picked
Wow.
English guy in his mid-40s.
Oh, well, that's a very soothing accent. So that's nice. I like that. I think I used to have a Garmin. Remember those with a British
Right?
guy's voice? That's a
Yep.
nice technology that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, really. That's crazy. All right, let's jump into this Jonathan Byerly. He's in a band called Plates of Cake, which we're going to hear about a little bit. And he's in another band, Emergency Group, that put out a fantastic LP last year called Inspection of Cruelty, which is 2 tracks clocking in at 46 minutes. Psych prog, experimental, love it. This first clip, we're going to talk about the disconnect and about the LP that they're working on. And we also get into some Taper's Choice and Denver versus New York City. So let's check that out. All right. Now, you record everything, right? Pretty
Yeah,
much when you play live. When do you listen back? Are you a type of person who listens that night, or do you wait a few days?
I'm pretty eager to listen back, so I'll listen shortly after, just as I'm like uploading a tape, and I'll do maybe some light EQ or stereo balancing and a quick master just to have it send to the guys. But after that, I pretty much have been sitting on them. I haven't gone back too much. We haven't put up anything on archive.org yet. I'm thinking about it. But but yeah, I feel like we have so much coming out between the tape next week and then the LP next year that I don't want to like oversaturate things,
All right.
but do like having the record, if only for myself. Kind of another dream of this band is just to kind of have a tapers friendly band, and so
I saw that on something somewhere. It said Tapers Wanted or Tapers Welcome.
yeah, exactly. We I think that's on our Instagram, and
Probably.
we've
Yep.
had some tapers at least two of our shows. One of a show we did in Tubby's in Kingston, New York, made it to NYC taper, which was really cool. And I've seen some people with their Zooms, but we're our main tapers too. So I'm taping everything, as is Andreas. But I would like, if we tour next year, it would be just sweet to see some tapers out in the audience. I mean, we got to earn it, but
Do you
that's the
find
goal.
do you find there's a disconnect between what you think when you're on stage and what you hear when you listen back?
Yeah, for sure. I think you never really know when, sometimes you think the band is really hot and that's actually not that happening. And then other times you're like, I don't know what's happening and I sound like shit. And maybe had too many beers and what am I doing? But then you listen back and it sounds great. So I don't think you really know. You can have an idea, but uh,
Don't pay it too much mind.
yeah, I think it would be disastrous to be thinking about that stuff like when you're in it, when you're doing a set, and just, yeah, I feel like you have to kind of just take a leap of faith and hope that muscle memory will kick in and that your ears are hearing what they need to hear, and it will work out.
Yeah, I hear you with that. What's up, Amanda? You got anything there? Or?
Um, yeah, so I know about the releases and all. Have you chatted about that? I don't want
Yeah,
to.
yeah, we did chat about
Oh,
it.
okay.
We haven't talked much about what's going to happen in the future. You guys ever going to
Yeah.
get to tour, or is it strictly we're in the city at this point?
Yeah, so we talked about Venal Twin, which is coming out on the 20th, thanks to Centripetal Force. We I don't know if it's like official or if I can really speak a whole lot about it, but we have an LP coming out probably next spring, early next summer. That was produced by Chris Schlarb of Psychic Temple.
Mhm.
He runs a studio and a record label out of Long Beach, California, called Big Ego. Um, Phenomenal records on that label. If you guys haven't checked it out, or your listeners, Big Ego Records. We made a record with him over the summer. That'll be coming out next year on vinyl. That'll be our vinyl debut. So super psyched about that one, and to support both releases, the upcoming one and that one. We're going to be touring in maybe early summer. We definitely want to do the West Coast, at least like a week's worth of dates in California, and Northeast as well. I'm not sure what else. I'd really like for the band to do the Milwaukee Psych Fest next year if that's happening. But
What
it's
about
all.
the Texas? Isn't there an Austin Psych Fest too?
I think there is, yeah, and I haven't booked a tour in a really long time, and but thankfully between the Centripetal guy and Chris and some other friends of ours, I think we've got a lot of folks that are eager to have us, and so
You
yeah,
guys
I'm
should
hoping
get
to.
up with Taper's Choice and do open for them on a couple West Coast shows. Have you heard Taper's Choice?
Yeah, I love Taper's Choice. Don't know them personally. They've got a really hilarious Twitter game. I feel like they're always trolling Phish or Goose fans or something. And I've thought about, maybe if I can think of something clever enough to tweet at them, I will. But yeah, would really love to play with them. And they were just out here in New York, and I was out of town, so I missed all of those shows, which was a bummer. But
I have a buddy who did every show. He ended up selling merch for him. They recruited him. They were like, "You're here every night. You're gonna sell merch for him."
That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I read their. They did an interview with Aquarium Drunkard, and I read they just seem like hilarious guys, and obviously they all come from really cool musical backgrounds. I think I've seen every guy in that band live in previous bands, of course, but especially Harrington is just fantastic.
We've spoken to them a few times. They are good guys there. And if you're in the Midwest, there's a lot of instrumental trios, right, Amanda? Like Cairo Jag and Connives kind of things that you might be a good people to pair up with,
Yeah,
because they kind of do the same thing you do. Cairo Jag is really heavier. It's more of dirty, loud. Their origin story was they were driving back from the Austin Psych Festival and decided to start a band. So,
oh yeah, that's awesome.
Where they came from.
Really where are y'all based, by the way?
I'm Baltimore, outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
Yep, and I live in Denver now. I'm from the New Jersey, New York City area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know if you were on yet, but I'm from Colorado originally. So I know Denver well. I lived and played around Denver a bunch from like 2002 through 2007 when I moved to New York City.
Okay, so we've flipped locations.
Yeah. Denver's an awesome town. I think like so many of my formative shows that I attended were at the Fillmore on Colfax, and then like as soon as I turned 21, was able to start gigging and would play at the Larimer Lounge and the Lion's Lair and the High Dive, and so many other places. And it was awesome. Like Denver was cool, it was really cool, but it was also like kind of pre-gentrification. At least it didn't have the sort of hyper gentrification that it has now. And there was just something really exciting about. I even lived behind the Lion's Lair for a time, and I drove a pedal cab for a little bit, and late night I would go to Pete's Kitchen with 24/7 Greek diner right on Colfax next to the Lion's Lair. I think, very very awesome town. So I hope you like living there too.
I do. I moved out here in large part for the scene, for music,
Awesome.
to be around it. And I didn't come here directly from New York, but one thing that comes up for me a lot when I'm talking to people is, the size of the city of Denver, and I'll throw Boulder and even Fort Collins, in there too, I guess. There's such a vibrant local music scene,
Hmm.
ins, pop-ups, just collaborations just seem to just kind of naturally happen all the time. And I think about this a lot being from the New York City area, growing up, outside the city. And so spending my formative music years bopping into New York and Philly for shows constantly. Um, I wonder, where you are, if that's happening, and maybe if it happens more on a neighborhood scale. New York City is obviously such a big place and there's so much happening there, but I wonder if you could get that same feeling, right, of kind of that network that just kind of naturally happens. Like, how have you found that to be out there?
That's a great question, and it's something I've thought about a lot and actually struggled with over the years. When I left Colorado for New York in 2007, I definitely gave up a really amazing like musical family community, and there was also at least at the time a very vibrant indie rock, for lack of a better word, scene. Um, and and it was great. And it took me a really long time to find something similar in New York. On top of that, and I got to caveat this because I don't know how much of it is my own projection of my own personal feelings versus what is like objective truth. But in 2007 and into like 2013, there was just something like very careerist and jaded about rock and roll in New York, and there's just too much competition here. Not even just between other bands, but just anything. Like why go to like a 4-band bill at a dive bar when you could like go to some, I don't know, pop up sushi whatever thing. It's just like people just care about different things as I don't know. I feel like you're competing with food and cocktails as much as you are other bands. Um, and I I don't know. I will say, and I've said this to other folks too, but I think the jadedness may have come to an end, like when it all shut down, with the pandemic. And
Take it
but
away
I
from them, right?
yeah, I think people realized how good they had it and then really missed it. But I should also say that I noticed, and again, it could just be me. I mean, I live under a rock. I don't have my finger on the pulse of everybody, but I did feel like it changed before the pandemic too. Like 2016, 2017, things started to feel exciting, and a lot of that is in large part because like New York rock got a little jammier, like with Chris Forsyth, like I mentioned earlier, and um, a band that I adore called Garcia Peoples, and so I mean, even there's a phenomenal Dead cover band in New York called High Time. You guys may have heard of them, but they're like Pigpen era scrappy like biker Dead. I don't think they play anything post 74, but they're not as like jazzy. They're not so much like a 73, 74 Dead as they are like a 71 like country biker rock Dead. And I mention all that because like I was getting like really kind of re-enthused about New York City's scene um, before the pandemic. Then everything shut down for a couple of years, and I think even more so, people are just more thrilled to be out, even if it's like at a DIY space with only 30 people. It's just less. People like to see music. People are happy to be out. And it doesn't feel as like hit or like hit chasing or careerist as maybe it did in the promise of like the late aughts where things like record deals still existed and bands could actually get quote unquote big. I think all that's just totally gone with
Good Lord.
streaming and just the carving out of the industry as a business.
All right, Kevin, we've got lots more from Jonathan coming up soon. But before we get back into the interview, want to just make sure everyone is following us on social media at All That Jam Pod, and then of course allthatjampod.com. Um, Trying to get some interesting things up there. We have so much content now. So I know we mentioned last week about the database. Really hoping that we can make information accessible for everybody. And speaking of that, YouTube. You can find some really great content there from interviews. So make sure you're looking for us. And, keep that in mind, like, subscribe, just give us some clues. What are you into? We'll talk to whoever, right? I have so many ideas from the last couple of weeks of shows. So I think there's lots to come. But let's get back into this interview. We're going to be talking with Jonathan about plates of cake. So why don't we take a listen? So I was reading up on plates of cake, and this was from, I think, 22, so pretty recently. I had read something that during pandemic times, you had done a bunch of either reconstruction of guitars or had refurbished some things, made some of your own guitar pedals. Is
Yeah.
that I was so curious about that because I find that fascinating. And we recently chatted with a sound engineer who's created his own, some of his own new kind of equipment. And I was curious kind of how that started and, what became of those projects.
Yeah, totally. That's an awesome question. And in plates, the other guitar player, Josh, has been building pedals for years, and he's really really good, and he's made a lot of his own pedals that he uses live and in the studio. Um, so I did my first build with him. We just built some classic fuzz faces based on the Dallas Arbiter specification, and there's nothing like it, if you can solder, and which is like you can learn in 10 minutes on YouTube. There's all these like schematics for pedal building. They're out there, and you can buy kits, or you can etch your own board and just get a schematic off the internet and build your own circuit based on all these classic designs. And so it's not I don't want to overstate like my skill. In fact, I'm very very beginner. I'm probably a very shitty pedal builder, but it's kind of like, I mean, it's like homebrewing, right? I mean, anybody can with not too much money to start up can build their own pedals, and it can be a lot of fun. For me, what was most interesting was just learning. There's so many boutique pedals in the market, and they're all $200-$300, and you kind of wonder what they are and what makes them special, and then you realize they're actually all, no matter what they are, what they're called, they're either based off of an old tone bender or based off of an old fuzz face. And I don't mean that in a bad way, like they're just ripping off old designs. I like that there's this tradition of really classic pedal designs that guys are either replicating in really high quality fashions, or maybe bringing a little bit of modification to. And so building pedals helped me learn about pedals. And now I can like nerd out and really kind of try to distinguish the difference in tone between, say, like a fuzz face used by Jimi Hendrix or a tone bender used by Mick Ronson. And I think part of the pandemic and not being able to like go out to bars, you find ways to entertain yourself. And so after you run out of like Netflix shows to watch, or bread making recipes, I just got real deep into guitar pedals and amp tones. And then I did also that same year I built a guitar. I didn't like cut down a tree and carve a body or anything. I got, yeah. It's a parts caster. So I mean, I got a neck and a body and some pickups, just all sourced through either Fender replacement parts or this company called Warmoth, who is a licensed dealer or manufacturer, I should say, of Fender replacement parts. And it's cool. You can design your own guitar. It's not cheap, but it's cheaper than buying like a brand new Strat. So what I did is I kind of sourced everything to match like a 59 to 61 Strat, but with all like the wood I wanted and the neck I wanted, and uh, all of the electronics, and also pretty. I mean, almost even easier than building a pedal. There's far fewer solder points on a guitar build than a pedal build. So yeah, that was fun, and that parts caster, Stratocaster, whatever you want to call it, has been my primary guitar in Emergency Group, and it's what I'm playing on both records, the record that's out and the one that's coming out, as well as the Final Plates album. It's all the home built Strat, so I'm proud of it for sure.
I love that. Yeah. And I love that you're still playing it. That was something I was curious about too. Have you made any modifications, or is it pretty much the way that you had done it up when you first were working on it?
I did. I got to admit, I had to get it set up after playing it for a bit. I think the maybe the neck got a little bit of out of socket, and I had to get the inclination fixed on it. But I took it to this guy, Patrick's Guitar Repair in Brooklyn. He's phenomenal. He works on all my stuff, and he really kind of did the final fine tooth and comb over it. And so now it's just a great player guitar. I love it. I do sometimes hop over to a Telecaster that I also play, and I like. I don't know. There's something really, really glassy and piercing about a Tele that sometimes I miss. But yeah, mostly the Strat. I mean, it's just such a versatile guitar, and there's so many different pickup configuration options, and you can sound like Dire Straits or Black Sabbath, whatever. It's just you can get so much out of the Strat. Not saying that I sound like those players or even compare, but you can get the tones. So they're fun guitars for sure.
Options are good.
Yeah, they can be. They can also just and that's the problem with having like a lot of pedals too. It's like you're on stage and it's like, well, are you going to focus on playing or are you going to fuck around with your pedals? Like, so sometimes too many options can be bad. But yeah, I'm just trying to find a balance.
Oh, right. I had never heard of this guy. I came across the Emergency Group thing, and Plates of Cake, completely different, but still way interesting. We got a lot of other stuff coming up this week, so why don't I throw that out there to you guys? And so this week on tomorrow we got the Trichomes, Stefan Trogish coming up, talking about live versus studio. Wednesday, our friend Marcus Rezak on Guitar Head, the new album, people he has playing, and a little bit of looking toward the future. Thursday we have Colin Settle from the Settlement. Again, about live versus studio and how you translate from one to the other. On Friday, we have Sean from the Kitchen Dwellers talking about their new one, Seven Devils, which actually I believe comes out on Friday. Saturday, we got John Spignassi and Scott Murkowski. Scott from Mike Gordon's band, and Max Creek is producing John's latest album, and we got both of them on. And then Sunday, Michael Falzerano from Hot Tuna, New Riders of the Purple Stage, about something he does called the English Town Project, which is only songs from the Grateful Dead, New Riders of the Purple Sage, and Marshall Tucker, because they are the three bands that played at English Town at that Grateful Dead show. So that's fascinating. But let's jump back into the end of this Jonathan Byerly, where he talks about his last three releases being on three different labels and finding new music in the digital world. We'll see you in a minute. You're going with three different labels and three releases, right?
Yeah, we are. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
It's like a bit of a social experiment you're doing.
yeah. We not only have the opportunity to, we also very much want to work with Island House again and Centripetal Force again. And then the third thing is very much a collaboration with Chris Schlarb of Psychic Temple. So we're working with him on that one. But yeah, a lot of goodwill across the board. And another interesting thing that y'all may have noticed that I've noticed is all of these labels I've mentioned have teamed up with one another for co-releases. So Centripetal and Island House just did a co-release of an Aaron Dooley record. Centripetal also has done co-releases with Third Man even, and Big Ego does stuff with Astral Spirit. So it's less, it's not as though the labels are in competition with each other so much as they are interested in collaborating with one another and sharing costs and sharing their audiences. And so I think, in this day and age, it actually makes a lot of sense working with different folks because, while there's overlap between these audiences, there's also outliers. And so we're just reaching, at this point, we're in a stage where we just need to like let as many people know that we can before we hit the road and go on tour next year. So it's nice having a label in California and a label in New York.
All right. Karina Reichman had Gorilla Toss opening for her on her most recent tour because she was trying to get out of the jam band space a little, and they're trying to get their foot in the jam band space a little. So,
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, Gorilla Toss. I saw that they've played at Tubby's a few times, and Tubby's is just a phenomenal club outside the city, up in Kingston, New York. We've gone up there and played, and just they got the most amazing bands. I think Taper's Choice might have even done a show there on that leg, but yeah, I think I saw that Gorilla Toss played there a few months back, so that's awesome.
Right? How is a label a net positive to have a label behind you these days?
I mean, it's also, we're still operating at such a small scale that I think anything helps to get the word out. You can just post your stuff on Bandcamp now, which is amazing. And both labels, primarily operate through Bandcamp, but it's for better or worse. I mean, maybe in some regards it's worse, but this platform operates like a social network, right? In the sense that you have followers. So it's like Emergency Group has their followers, but Island House has their followers, and Triple has their followers. So it's just reach. And you're just, there's just not a lot of pie to go around, right? There is, it's infinite. We can put out music for infinity now that it's all in the cloud. But what is finite is people's attention span.
And breaking through all of that, everybody, you can do it, everybody else can do it too. So there's so much, it's hard to break through. I look for people I trust mentioning bands. I go and I look at the new releases on Bandcamp, and a lot of times it's what a band is called if I listen to them, or what the name of the song is, as much as anything,
Yeah, totally. You've got to be ruthless, and you're faced with so much choice that having any type of filter, even if it's not a fair one, like, oh, I don't like your band name, that's not fair, because you might be like, the Beatles, that's a shitty band name, I'm never gonna listen to that band.
What a dumb name is that?
You're going nowhere.
But yeah, I get it. Like, you've got to, I make the same kind of value judgments because you just have to, right? You got to like sift through it all. So yeah, I've got like Twitter is a great resource, although that seems to be going down the tube as a platform. I am old school in the sense that I still very much value good old-fashioned music writing. I read reviews. I try to get the band, whether it's Plates or Emergency Group, I try to get us record reviews, because for me, that's kind of like what makes your album real, almost like having people come up to your show. It's like, what makes this real? There's not a lot of tangibility once you've put a recording out or once you've done a gig. Like, either way, you're still going back to your day job or whatever. So it's like, what do you get to hold on to, especially if you're not making any money? And for me, it's like having a record of like criticism and people that thought about the music, whether they loved it or hated it or were neutral on it. So music writing, really important to me, but not just as a guitar player, but as a consumer of music. I go on Dusted or Aquarium Drunkard. and I read the reviews. And it's like, if I like the writer, there's an element of trust there, but also the writing and what they have to say. And that will oftentimes make me buy an album without clicking play on the streaming or the Bandcamp, because that's how I grew up doing it. You go to the store and buy CDs when I was a kid. Like, you had to take a $15 chance on something you never heard. And I love
Aquarium
that.
Drunkard years ago used to always have an MP3. I have CDs full of MP3s I just downloaded off of their blog post, and I guess they got popped at some point, or someone told them they couldn't.
Yeah, I think they've got that little streaming thing. I think I don't know if they want people to know about this at all, but I think if you right click on the streaming, you can still grab the MP3, but for like only a specific amount of time. Because I'm like you, I'm always trying to grab stuff off that website, and I find if you go back, like,
The
a couple of
mixtapes are
years.
always cool. They'll have the Aquarium Drunkard mixtapes that you can still, I think, download off of there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the Lanyap sessions expire after some amount of time. But I mean, yeah, that entire website is like an education for someone, I would suggest, that's like, how do I find out about cool music? I mean, the easiest thing you can do is just be like, go read Aquarium Drunkard.
Exactly. Oh man. All right. It's getting to be 7 o'clock. I think I should probably do a few things. I recap every Phish show like a Sports Center kind of thing. So
Oh, awesome.
yeah, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? I would just want to go to bed, but I gotta stay up because
Oh, it's great.
I've been submitted to it. Did you have anything else, Amanda? Or?
I think I'm great. I just I really appreciate your time, and it's funny you mentioned Dusted, because that's where I went to actually find that blog that mentioned the equipment stuff that you had done during
Oh, cool.
pandemic.
Yeah,
It's good.
that I love that site, and it's such a labor of love by the people who run it. And Jennifer Kelly is one of the best writers in the game, especially for rock and roll stuff, and I think she wrote that.
Yes,
So,
yeah, she did.
yeah, yeah. This was lovely. It's like a real gift to just be able to talk about your own band and other bands for an hour. So thank you so much for having me.
Kevin, another great interview. And like you mentioned, when we get to talk with artists that maybe we are not completely familiar with, I know that you and I both learn a lot over the last month or so of helping out at various gigs, here in the Denver area. I've gotten to see a bunch of new bands. And so that gets me excited, because I know that they appreciate whatever support they can get. And likewise, we appreciate getting to know music that's happening, that maybe we're just not familiar with yet. So I would say to everybody, stay tuned, because there's some really great stuff coming up.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to throw out some final thoughts here. I'm going to play off that. New bands are fantastic, but as we find, they have a much harder trudge in the world than someone like Phish does. But when I listened to Phish this weekend, I was reminded that the same four guys for 41 years are still doing things that are breaking new ground, and it's just simply amazing. It makes me wonder, bands that have turnover, can they achieve that? If you have constantly different people coming in and out, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, a band like the Disco Biscuits are having their 1997 this year. They are on track to have the best year ever. They're playing better than they ever have. And those guys have been 20 years. I think the drummer may be different, was turned over at some point, but there we go.
Yeah, that longevity. That's a really amazing thing. And I agree with you. I mean, 41 years, whether or not someone is a Phish fan, you have to respect that. It's amazing.
Yep. Exactly. And with that, I'm going to say, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll talk to you soon, Amanda.
Have a good week, Kevin.